Okay, I'd like to call to order the Village of Ashwaubenon Park and Rec Board for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Mark Castonia.
Here.
Deborah Lundberg. Here. Dean Hess.
Here.
Chris Serbel.
Here.
Donovan Miller.
Here.
Tracy Flukie. Here. Heidi Murphy. Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if possible. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please keep in mind our brave young and old men and women abroad and here in the States that are helping us stay free and safe. Action on the agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state name and address, limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personal issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named. Board is not able to take action at this meeting. We've got nobody in the audience and nobody online, so we'll move on. Written communications, we did have, I think, a couple. One was to Rex on behalf of the Ashwaubenon Department of Public Safety. Thank you for your donation of an Ashwaubomay Park passes for the DARE essay winners. Students were recognized for completing the DARE program. We truly appreciate your support and generosity. Signed, Jackie Dunlap, Public Safety Officer and DARE Liaison Officer. And another one from Dan and Amy Stevepak. Thank you for providing the room for us. All had a blast and is so appreciative of all the former students and friends that came out. Oh, I think it was Al. We hope we took care of all that we needed to clean up the room. If there are any issues, please let us know. Thank you again.
After the Ashwaubenon High School track, as some of you may know, was dedicated, or, Al Vandenberg was named after Al Vandenberg, or dedicated. And so then the family and the 1974 track team and whatever had their kind of like after dedication ceremony get together at the community center.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's what that was about.
Okay. Action on consent agenda, the Park and Rec Board regular meeting from April 18th, 2023.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Action items, request to sell alcohol in Ashwaubomay Park for Art Street 2023.
So this is, I don't want to say it's a formality, but whenever there is alcohol sales in Ashwaubomay, it needs to be approved by the powers that be, and you're the powers that be. So this is for the Art Street event, second year that we're hosting it in Ashwaubomay at the end of August. They did it last year. There were no issues. So staff recommendation is to proceed forward again with approval for 23.
I motion to approve, please. Sorry, the words. The words are. Also, I know Ms. Faltinsky on this, so if we do have any issues, you can just let me know, and we can work some things out if we need to.
Okay.
But motion to approve.
Second motion.
Under discussion or just a question, Rex? So they can have alcohol anywhere in the park then with this, correct?
It's still not allowed within the boys' baseball complex.
Okay.
It's-
So anywhere but the boys' baseball complex?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And within the lake area. But
Yes.
the lake won't be open at that point,
Okay.
so,
All right. Thank you.
yep.
Just out of curiosity, is the layout all still going to be the same? And
Different.
is it bigger this year?
I don't know if it's bigger. I think they're trying to actually contract it so that it's not so spread out.
Okay.
It's still going to be at the north end of the park. They're going to be utilizing some of the electrical panels that we're installing as part of the trail system. So the vendors will have, a little more direct electrical hookup to do. I haven't seen a layout of the current system yet, but from what I've heard is they're trying to contract it a little bit to make things more central.
Okay. What was the fee? I saw on, I forget, what's the app, Next Door? I saw feedback on there from last year. It was pretty mixed. What did you get back on it?
I was there on Friday night, drove through, and it seemed to go well, from what I heard. Also drove through on Saturday morning when the weather was good, and there was already a nice crowd there on Saturday morning, but really, the jury's out in terms of the numbers just because of the weather last year. It started raining around noonish, if I'm remembering right, and it pretty much rained all day Saturday and all day Sunday. So they had a tough go to get a good feel on how it is working out. But from the Friday night and Saturday activities, from what I understand this year, they've already made some changes in terms of locations on things.
Okay. That was the first year, right, last year?
Yep. First year.
Remember
First
going,
year
but I didn't, it
here.
wasn't right.
Yeah.
First year here,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No. No.
No.
Just yell.
I didn't push a button. We did meet with the organizers from Art Street last year, after last year's event, and I think there was a variety of feedback that we received from them. I'm just stalling.
Okay, now you can hear me. We did receive some feedback from the organizers last year. There was mixed reviews, predominantly based on two things. One, parking and the shuttle condition. So parking is limited in Ashwaubomay. And so there were just some, I think, perspectives from individuals that attending the event that parking was difficult, or maybe the shuttling system was a little confusing. So they are working at trying to clarify and find those appropriate parking locations with shuttling. The other aspect of it was just simply the fact that it wasn't in downtown Green Bay, and that change was difficult for some. With that being said, they did express, and one of the main reasons why they were interested in coming back is that their vendors did exceptionally well. So the art vendors themselves really wanted it to come back to Ashwaubomay because of how well they did from a sales perspective. So that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Without vendors, there is no art street. So it was important to them to ensure that the vendors were happy.
Good. I thought the parking was easy. I mean, when I'd go downtown, when it was downtown, you try to find a side street you can park on. That was the hardest thing on the whole weekend, but I thought anyway.
Especially on the Saturday with the farmer's market
Yeah,
downtown.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just a mess.
I know I got some feedback as far as like the level of service from Ashwaubenon, like from public safety and that perspective, like they got a much higher level of service, like customer service from that perspective as well. So I know I bring kind of that perspective, but that's, that was the feedback that I got. They established a really good relationship with the officer who was assigned down there and had a good working relationship with him. So any issues were like put out immediately. They didn't always have that, I think, when it was downtown as well. So.
Okay, good.
My only question was on, and this is just trivial stuff, I guess, but baseball diamond lights, I assume Park and Rec crew will turn them on, or is that, do you know if that building will be left open, if that's something that AYB needs to think about ahead of time?
I do not know. I have not been involved in any organizational meetings yet.
Okay, it's in there, identify other needs thing, so
Yeah.
if we got to clean that room out, or if the doors, but.
Oh, the concession area, you mean?
Yeah, to get to the lights, apparently they want the lights on overnight, according to this, but.
It would probably be staff that turns those on and then shuts those off.
Okay.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. B, discussion action on design/planning of the new VOA Pocket Park. Rex.
All right. And I called it a pocket park. Oh my gosh, tongue tied.
Words are hard, Rex.
Blah blah blah.
Words are so hard.
I called it a pocket park, and actually Tracy pointed out to me, which I appreciate, that, per NRPA standards, it's actually a mini park. A mini park is 0.25 acres to, is like 0.5 acres, and this park, I want to say, is what, 0.43, something like that? So, long story short, getting on with the agenda item is, it's really right on the other side of the first Element apartment building over here, or the second building, I should say, on the corner of Element Way. And what's happening is, and it's even going to get more dense, is there's 400 units just between Bohemian Park and the Element, which is 4 buildings. In addition to the buildings which you see right now, there's still 2 more Bohemian Park buildings that are planned. In addition to that, there could be another housing development that's kind of in the works right now, which really hasn't, we haven't discussed it a lot, but there's the potential for even more housing. So all of a sudden, what our entertainment district is becoming a reality. It's becoming, a second downtown area, in my opinion, just my words. And as such, we have this in our corp plan specifically for this reason. Because of the density, we're looking at potentially needing a little bit more green space, because there's no easy green space park area for people to use at this point. The closest ones would be Aubinger Park, which is, up on Ridge. And then certainly there's even more housing being planned on Mike McCarthy Way. And I think the long-range plans, which are also in our corp, is to add some amenities and potentially a sidewalk or pathway to get over to Mike Van Park. And Mike Van is on the eastern fringe of the entertainment district. But in the center, which is right over here where a lot of this housing is, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units, we really don't have anything. And so what we're looking for is just your thoughts and recommended action to take to the village board to use this parcel that the village has. It's really the only land in this area that the village actually owns that could be suitable for a park, to develop that into a green space area for the number of residents that are moving in, and for the future residences and for the future businesses that I guarantee you will be filling this whole area up. Rettler and Associates was my recommendation, or to do it. I mean, Rettler has helped us with a number of parks in the past, both under my umbrella as well as under Tracy's umbrella when Tracy was the Park and Rec director here. They helped us with the remediation of Klipstein Park just a couple of years ago. They helped us with the general bubble design of Sand Acres Park. They've got some good landscape architects and some good ideas, and are up on some of the current things that are there. This is a small park, so it's not going to be, a huge thing, but I'm just recommending with Rettler's proposal, I had them put this together, and that's my recommendation for the consultant to help with the design of it. So I talked with Joel a little bit yesterday, and in addition to what's on your agenda packet, he made a radius map. A mini park typically serves about a quarter-mile radius, maybe a little bit more than that, but around where that mini park is going to be located. And again, with the high density, it's certainly appropriate. But that's what that extra sheet is just the area that it's going to be serving right now. A couple numbers with that radii map that was handed out by Kelly. In addition to the 400 units between the Element and Bohemian Park, we also have the 76 two-family homes, 1 or 2 family homes, and as well as additional units in the Marvell apartments. But like I said, there's also a number of other developments potentially that could be on the docket, and whether they're on the docket or not, they're going to happen because this land is just becoming too valuable and too many people want in on it. So with that, I want to hear your thoughts on development of that pocket park. We would love a bigger park, don't get me wrong. But quite honestly, the land is so expensive right now. It's going to be out of our price range to buy additional land, really.
What are the other, I'm sorry, what are the other mini parks in the area that would be comparable?
Canterbury.
Okay. So like
Canterbury
the
would probably be the
structures,
closest one. I mean, you could say maybe Aubinger, you could say maybe Skyline.
Okay.
You know, I think Skyline's a little bit bigger than this one would be, but comparable, I would probably say Canterbury would be.
would you set it up similarly then, or are you looking for something a little bit different as far as like
That would be
what's
part of the
in the park?
process.
Okay.
That would be part of the process. So we'd actually ask Rettler to come up probably with, you know, like 2 designs or
Okay.
something like that. We'd bring back some of the ideas to the park board. Really what some of the initial discussion would be, I think, is how much green space do you want? You know, a lot of these are single apartments, but there are some families in there that do have kids. If nothing else, they're going to start having kids,
Right.
or they're going to be kids visiting,
Yep.
depending upon the age. So, you know, then the question is, you know, playground, how big of a playground? Do we just want to do something small? Do we want to do something bigger? The Element has a pet policy where they are, I don't want to say one of the few, but they do allow pets in all 4 of their buildings. So if you ever drive by here in the morning and in the evening when people are done with work, you see a lot of people walking their dogs. And you're thinking, where are these people walking their dogs coming from on Holmgren Way? Because it doesn't seem like they would be walking, you know, like why are there animals on, that's where they're coming from, is there's a lot of people in these apartments. So then the thought is, well, do we do like a dog waste station, you know, some place where they can bring their animal over and stuff like that. There's so many, again, if this is approved at this level and then village board, this would all need to be fleshed out, and that this would come back to you guys again for this discussion. But, you know, obviously a shelter, someplace with shade, you know, tree plantings. You know, the village has its comprehensive plan coming up and some kind of like goals and objectives. And part of that, we've talked about having a public art program. You know, is it appropriate? Is this a site that's potentially appropriate to put a piece of public art in? You know, it's kind of like a centerpiece where it gives it a name, or, you know, kind of say, oh, that's the park that has the, whatever it is, you know.
Has there been any, like looking into the like workout parks at all? Like the ones that have like the workout equipment at it? The reason I'm asking, we were in Minnesota last week and there was a park in Egan that had like an elliptical, like a metal elliptical and like rings that you could go across. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
There are a number of neat adult exercise workout parks.
And I guess that's the root of my question
stations.
is, are we gearing this toward kiddos or are we gearing this toward adults?
That's not my decision. That's, you know, I can give my opinions when it comes to be that time, but that's the direction that you guys need to talk about when the time is appropriate, is what do we want this park to be? You know, with the density that we have. Remember, it's because of the density and there's not a lot of green space. So how do we want it used? What do you want it to be? And then Rettler will kind of fine tune a few things, and then we'll bring it back and eventually go to village board to you know, for them to have a kick at the can, basically.
If my memory serves me right, the developer for the Element project and the Bohemian project, they both indicated in their development plans that they were going to have a green space somewhere located within their development, is probably for the same things that you're proposing for this park. Are those green spaces?
I believe there's some for the Element that has been proposed. I haven't seen the latest and greatest plans. I don't know, I don't believe like playground equipment and amenities were part of that. I want to say it was some green space with a walking path going through, so basically you could get from like Element Way over to Morris. Again, Mark, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, but I don't think that's ever, we haven't really worked on that aspect of it, so I think that would, and I don't know if that's going to be considered public area, or if it's just for that particular housing development, which then kind of leaves out not that anyone would be able to know who lives where. But our park would be basically for everyone versus if one of the other housing units put in something in specifically, it might
that.
only be for them.
But I'm wondering, are they reneging on their plans to provide a green space, or?
I don't think that's the case. I just don't think, because that's a couple of units out still, I don't think it's really been discussed, because I want to say, if I'm remembering right, that was right next to Capital Credit Union, if I'm remembering right, where that was supposed to be, and I don't think they're there yet.
They were supposed to be putting up their buildings in kind of a square or some type of arrangement, and in the center was going to be a green area for their people to go and be able to be outside.
For their people.
For their people to be outside, right? Now, other people can't go in there, but their people can go out to the public park.
So the way I see this developing is whatever they're planning on doing, again, this is a lot of moving parts here, but we need to start our planning process as well, is we'd work with whatever that space is, and if they're zigging, then we would zig. You know, if they're just looking for green open space, that's great. Then maybe we can focus more on the picnic shelter, you know, a piece of public art and the playground area, because that's not what they're going to be doing, you know, in the future when they do theirs. So my bottom line is we wouldn't try and duplicate it, but we try and keep things separate so that there would be something, you know, expanded. That's not the same thing.
Mark, I can add to that. So Element is currently finishing out Building 4, which is their final building. They do have what we'd call a gathering space, an outdoor gathering space between buildings 3 and 4 that was constructed as part of the Building 3 project. What that encompasses is some outdoor seating areas. There is a kind of an open canopied shelter, if you will, outdoor fireplaces, grilling areas, things of that nature. But it is exclusive to the residents of Element buildings 1 through 4. Bohemian, as part of their Building 2 project, and there is still other outdoor gathering areas planned for buildings 3 and 4, but Building 2, which is the one currently under construction, there is a cafe that's planned on the first floor of that building, right on Morse Avenue. And immediately adjacent to the cafe is, again, another outdoor gathering area, seating area, likely for members of the residents of the building, but also customers from the cafe. So you can order coffee and a sandwich maybe and go sit outside and enjoy the small green spaces. So they are meeting the expectations when their site plan came in. The other thing I'll mention really quickly too is that they both developments paid park impact fees, or park development fees, I should say. And so their residents and the developer, for that matter, have paid for those fees for those park
Yes,
facilities.
I understand that. Is that cafe, is that going to be open to the public, so to speak, or is it going to be for residents only?
The area that the Element has is accessible from public areas such as Element Way. It's designed specifically for the residents at Element, so I would suspect that if the residents started finding people loitering in their gathering area, if you will, they probably would complain to management. The area by Bohemian, that's obviously going to be probably catered more towards customers to the cafe, albeit it is open to the public. So if, let's say, you wanted to leave here at noon to go eat lunch over in that seating area, you would be able to do that.
But the idea of both of these projects is to cater to their particular residents, to draw them in because they're offering amenities to them.
Yeah, legitimate
Where
concerns, Mark. I was thinking that, oh, go ahead.
Where exactly located is the mini park for us?
The one they're
I
proposing.
don't quite comprehend where our little mini park is. This one here?
Okay, there's a map in the packet,
Okay.
Deborah, and there's like a green box that I made a green box right in the middle of it that kind of encircles the parcel that we're looking at.
Rex, is it just it's on the corner of Element Way and Element Way, correct? And it would be on the
Correct.
southwest corner, and it's just that first small parcel, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so it's right on the corner.
So it's right around Morris
It's right here.
and
No, it's right
Homer.
here, Element and Element. Right there.
I don't know,
And
is
the
the
area
map
that
in,
Joel was just
maybe the map's not in color, the ones that you have.
in that area.
Oh, they are.
They are.
There, okay.
Question I have, Rex, is you said there's 400 units right now. When you talk about units, how many people do we say typically when they talk about that? Is it 2 people per unit, or is there any standards that you know that we're catering to 800 people, or
Well,
what they use for that?
I don't know. There's 400 individual units, but some of them are 1 bedrooms, some of them are 2 bedrooms. So it could be, I suppose it could, my guess it's probably closer to 500 to 600 people, you know, because I'm assuming some of those 2 bedrooms means there's multiple people living in that particular unit.
And then the 2 more units that are planned, where are those going to be located? Are they part of the Bohemian one or Element, or are they in a different area in the circle?
I'll defer to Joel on that one.
Yeah, so Element Building 3, so I pulled the map up here, and this is an old aerial image from 2020, so it's a little outdated. But Building 3 is essentially where I'm kind of circling here on the map. Building 4 is currently under construction in this general area here.
And we're going east.
Yeah.
Or west.
West,
excuse me.
yeah. The parcel in question that we're looking at, the mini park, is owned by the village right here. So it's on the corner of Element Way. Give you reference, this street right here is Holmgren Way. And Bohemian 2 is under construction right now on the corner of Morris and Holmgren. Building 3 would run perpendicular to Building 2 for Bohemian, and then Building 4 would enclose this area here. So it kind of creates this square pattern, if you will, a rectangular pattern of buildings.
Right next to the Capital Credit Union?
Correct.
Okay. just
So on this map, it's the Wawerka Group LLC, is that's what, those parcels are all the Bohemia projects? On the radius map?
That is correct.
Okay.
So besides those 2, the Bohemian adding buildings, and then Element adding, no, they got the 4th in, so they're not really adding another one, correct? There's no other ones planned within this radius right now, except for that one you just mentioned.
Nothing concrete at this point. There's been ongoing conversations about property on Oneida Street for future development or redevelopment. So again, nothing concrete, but I would anticipate over the next few years, you'll start to see some other properties redevelop.
Okay. And maybe some more apartments.
Correct.
And then the 76 homes, Rex, you mentioned, that's really the Oneida Street area, pretty much?
Correct, the western fringe, yep.
Okay.
Do we know how many units are in the Marvell Lane apartments that would be impacted by this and be able to use that?
I'm going to guess there's a couple hundred units in there.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big complex.
I mean, you can.
We were conservative in our numbers. I think we guessed 72, but I think that was based on the number of buildings and assuming that each were 8-unit buildings, but I think there's some that are 12-unit buildings.
Okay.
So it's more than 72.
So we'll be looking at serving close to 1,000 people with this park, potentially.
In the whole thing, you're saying?
Yeah, in that whole green radius, because if you go south of Marvell, there's those Marvell Lane apartments.
Yeah.
So, and those exist already, and those I know for a fact have families in them.
Yeah.
So those are more than 1-bedroom apartments, so I know there's plenty of people in there that will obviously begin using that immediately once it's built.
Plus the businesses that are here now that Rex alluded to before, it's going to grow, it's going to start growing big time, and people at lunchtime taking a walk, grabbing a coffee, grabbing a water.
Right.
I think you need, it takes some thought, but you can't think of what this area is going to be like right now. But really, in 10 or 20 years, I don't think you're going to recognize half the stuff around here.
No.
I really believe that.
You mean life exists after the draft? I don't understand. Is anybody else nervous for that?
I think there's going to be more hotels. I think there's going to be a lot more housing. I think there's going to be a lot more businesses.
Right.
This is becoming a new downtown area.
Yeah.
And
I think
we need to try and, in my opinion, as the director, we need to try and set ourselves up to handle what some of that.
And the
influx
extension
is
of the
going to bring in.
Titletown district, the growth of the Titletown district has been astronomical. Even, I've lived here for 8 years, and that was still Kmart when we lived here. So you look at 8 years ago, that was still Kmart, and now look at it,
Yep.
like to extend that and become, you know, it's not a bedroom community for Green Bay anymore. Green Bay is our bedroom community. So like looking at it from that perspective.
In terms of funding, what pays for the park, as Joel alluded to in the past, we have our park impact fees. So every unit that is sold, so now there's over 400 units. Everyone's paying, well, what is it, 642? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. So it's a fair amount of money that's being chipped into the park development fund to do things just like this. We don't have to purchase the land, which is wonderful. Now we just need to develop the land. So that helps us out tremendously. But it's for exactly purposes like this that we have the park impact fees, is to try and lessen the impact of, on the park and recreation facilities due to the new business and residential housing that are being brought in.
I agree with you, Rex. Now's the time, I think, to do something like this before we get behind. And like you just said, I was thinking about it before, this is exactly why we have the park development fund and what it should be used for.
So Rex, then, if what you're looking for tonight is approval to contract with Rutler, and the total cost of that would be the $7,400, and that includes the data collection, the site analysis, a development program, and the master plan development, correct? It's just items 1 through 4 on their contract.
Correct.
So it would not include any construction management, none of that. I noticed they had that in there, but I'm just
Yeah, because
assuming.
we don't know what we're going to be putting in there. So
Okay.
that's for us to work with Rutler on of what we want in there. And then they're going to come up with that plan, and then we'd go to bid that out for the actual development portion of it.
One thing I noticed in their site analysis they have in there that I'm pleased to see is on number 9. They talk about looking at how people are going to get to that park. We just talked about 1,000 people may be served by this little park, and how are people going to safely get there by car, by foot, by bike? And that's really important because we have high-density housing in this area, and I think people like to just get out and walk and get to places and not have to maybe jump in their car to go over 2 blocks away. So I'm glad that that's in there, and I would encourage them to definitely do that and look at where sidewalks are not, where it's easy to get there by bike, because it's important to be able to get people to this little park in the area.
I'll make a motion to approve Rutler as the site plan proposal for the village.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
8C, phase planning approval for Ashwaubomay River Trail Extension.
All right, we've got a couple fun topics to talk about tonight. So we are in full gear right now with the bridge construction and then the plaza overlook area. In fact, they were pouring concrete today on the trailhead, which is located immediately north of the lake parking lot. And they were also pouring a couple of slabs where benches are going to go and a few other concrete spots that the asphalt will abut up to. I believe the asphalt trail in Ashwaubomay will be laid either at the end of this week or at some point next week. So we're coming along pretty good on this. Once the asphalt trail is laid, then we'll start to do some of the landscaping. Some of the amenities, i.e. the chairs, the bike pump stations and whatever, that's all been ordered. It's been ordered for a while now. Those are going to come in when they come in. Unfortunately, there's a lot of manufacturing delays that are out there, and there's a lot of orders out there. But we'll be putting those in, as they arrive. But long story short is the end is near for this phase of the Ashwaubomay River Trail project. So bang, right into the next phase, and that is the exterior trail going around Ashwaubomay Park. I tried to highlight it by having a green pathway starting, and this may or may not, it's not, it's approximate. I mean, I'm guessing where it's going to go. But in general, it's going to follow that general route. So it's the green line around the exterior of the park. So we would work with Grafe on the engineering, what's needed. We probably need to beef up the area behind the lake a little bit because it's fairly narrow back there. So if we want an 8 or 10-foot pathway behind the lake, we're probably going to need to bring in some riprap and things like that to build it up to be able to have that width. But basically the talk is right now is the discussion is to contract with Grafe to begin the design. Again, it's not to build the trail, it's to design the trail and what it's going to take, what challenges and whatnot are going to be needed with the design and to get it around all the way around the park over to the boat launch area. And that proposal is following the map. So they're looking at an engineering fee for the design and supervision of $44,600. And again, this would be paid a couple different ways. It could be paid, partially out of park development funds. It could be paid partially out of TIF 3, I believe. We don't have a lot of time left in our TID 3 program, and this would certainly, I believe, be eligible for that. It's the same funding source that we're using to pay for a good portion of the bridge, the current project. So questions on that? And again, this is not, we don't have a design in mind. We don't, I don't know whether we're going to go left or right or jog this way or that way. This is to figure that out. This is the design process, which would then be brought back to the park board and ultimately the village board, who either says, yes, I like it. No, I don't. If you do like it, then we'd start to get bid specs written to bid it out. So what happens this year is I'm guessing it's going to be more, if it's approved, it would probably be more administrative work. And then next year in 2024 is when the actual trail work would probably take place in terms of if there was construction.
So Rex, to clarify the total amount, the 44.6, so 9,600 is strictly for the topographical survey. And then the 35,000, does that include construction administration and everything? That does not, again, correct? That's just going to... That's
just the general design and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work.
So if you look at their
So
proposal...
it probably would not include like construction management.
Okay, so it would be survey, it would be the civil engineering section, the preliminary design on this contract. I would assume it doesn't include the final design, or does that include that 35,000? And obviously, maybe not bidding would be included. So it seems kind of high, I guess, of what the 35,000 for, I guess I'd like to know more what exactly that includes in there.
I can ask Grafe. I'd be working with Pat Skalecki again, who I'm working with right now on the bridge project. I could ask him if he would be able to attend the village board meeting next week, or at least remote in, and specific questions like that could be answered.
I mean, it's all outlined on
answer it.
8CA. Looks like the preliminary design, final design, bidding services, construction administration. Like all of that's kind of put in there.
8CA.
Is that all in there?
Page 29 of the packet has a bunch of stuff, like 28 and 29.
Yeah, it does spell it all out, but because the preliminary design I could see, final design, maybe not. Is that included in the, because are they going to go that far? And then the bidding, I would assume the bidding is not in there, but I'm not sure. And maybe they're
Yeah,
putting
it
in
says
for the whole
prepare
project?
It says prepare the project manual, including front end and all necessary spec sections appropriate for bidding. So basically, they produce the bidding packet, it looks like.
So they're taking it all the way through out to bid, construction documents, the whole works is in that 35,000 then?
According to this, yes.
And if you look at page 30, there's additional services for additional compensation is detailed below, so you could add that on. And then there's a list of things that Ashwaubenon will be like responsible for providing at the bottom of that list, or at the bottom of that page. So it seems to be pretty all-encompassing of what the bid cost is.
I will say that it's been, I've enjoyed working with Grave. I think they've done a good job with the bridge project to date on what they're doing. And, you know, dealing with a few hiccups that we're having with Michaels, and I think they're doing a good job with it. So,
Hiccups with
for whatever
Michaels?
that's worth.
Never.
What's that?
Hiccups with Michaels, never. My daddy works with them.
I'm sure it was a subware if there's any hiccups.
Well, and I guess the reason I was confused on it, maybe, I see where it's all laid out in the bid proposal, and I have no problem with Grafe. I think they're a good firm. The monetary impact, it talks about future construction would only start when approved by the bid by the village board. So then it's like, okay, we're 44,000. Is that going to take us all the way through construction documents? And the village board maybe won't go there, you know? So that's my question is, how much does the 44,000 actually include? And you said maybe it does include everything, but the way this is written, it almost is like we're looking at just some preliminary information to
Well,
start.
again, I'm happy to ask Pat or a representative from Grave to be with us in some form or fashion next Tuesday night.
I mean, I think it'd be great if we could get construction documents and get the whole thing going, because then next year it could potentially be built. But I guess I just am not sure of that. I would like to get more clarification.
I read through it, Rex, and I did not get the impression it included construction.
That's what I was thinking too, but
The construction supervision you're talking about?
construction at all.
I didn't get the impression it included the construction of the pathway.
No, it's
No,
not.
it
That's
doesn't.
That's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, that would, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not.
This is just the
construction.
design and everything up to the bid.
Well, that's like, yeah, you were, okay, yeah.
So what I'm circling back here, you know, it sounds like there's some consternation, but for the sake of moving it forward, again, this would still go to village board in theory, and then any specific questions can certainly be answered by Grave at that time. I can have a request that one of them remote in and they can be answered or questioned, you know, in person.
So obviously the trail system is in our comprehensive plan, right?
Yes, it has been for a long time.
Yeah. We need this to move forward.
If you're comfortable with Grave.
Yeah.
And I'm choosing Grave because they're who we're working with right now on the bridge. That's why I got the quote from Grave.
So on page 28, for this project, Rafe proposes to provide the following basic services. So that 44,000 includes that bullet point list of the services that they're providing. Final design, bidding services, like, I think it's up to the construction, and that's like, given the terrain over there, and like the topography and all of the surveying and what's underneath it and I don't think 44 is, like, I think that's not an unfair number for the scope of the project. You're looking at the amount of acreage and the amount of different factors they're having to look at. It says something about erosion in there. I don't know anything about erosion, so I feel like it's fair, but like I said, what do I know?
Yeah, if it includes the bidding and the construction management, it is very fair.
I just don't know
But I
about
just wasn't
construction
sure, but-
management piece of things. I don't know. It says construction administration.
Yeah.
So as far as construction management, is that the entire scope of the project then? I don't think, that would be different, I think, but
So this is pretty typical for a GRAFE
Construction meeting.
proposal. So there's really kind of two main emphasis of services. The first is just the general survey work, which is identified. That's the lower value. GRAFE does consider civil engineering to be from preliminary design through construction administration. However, based on feedback that I think we're hearing from the park board is we could simply ask GRAFE to break out the construction administration services from the civil engineering component so that $35,000 for civil engineering includes preliminary design, final design, preparation of bid documents, plus the equivalent of 8 weeks of construction administration and oversight. We can certainly pull out, let's say, the bidding and the construction administration and give us 3 separate breakouts. So that in the event that at the end of final design, we have an estimate probable cost from the engineer, it's a go or no go then at that point from the village. And those other dollars that are used to actually bid the project and provide oversight, we could pull those back from GRAFE then at that point.
Yeah, if they could break it out, that'd be great. Then at least everything is really clear, because hopefully it'll go and it'll be a great project, and we'll keep working with GRAFE all the way through, but if the prices come in too high or whatever, we may not be able to do it. So, and to at least know that. Because it's 2 different budgets too. 23, 24, but it's coming out of TIF and Park, so.
Yeah, this particular project, the work that's being prescribed here is in the 23 budget. It was appropriately allocated this year.
Yeah.
But when we get to the point of actually bidding, building, constructing it, that would be a separate, probably 2024 budget cycle then.
Okay. The only other question I was wondering is, with the path itself, can we have them look at that connection through the water treatment plant as well as part of this? I know that they're kind of working, there's a subcommittee kind of working on it, but just have them look at that as well, because that'll be another piece of this.
Which we may or may not be involved with. So there's already I don't have the date with me right now, but we already have a planning meeting with Brown County set within the next couple of weeks. They have a committee specifically that are going to be looking at this. They're basically waiting for us. When we make our trail around, and they're going to start ramping up their efforts, putting the trail again, working with New Water, putting it into the fairground and over to the Pekowski boat launch. So I talked with Matt Crease, who's the Brown County Parks Director, late last week, and he sent out a meeting request, which we accepted. And so there's already a subcommittee from the Park Department, Brown County Park Department, to start to address this trail and the connection into the fairgrounds and how they want it to look. And then that discussion will take place in terms of the connection behind New Water, or somewhere around New Water. So.
Okay. So then, obviously, GRAFE will know what's been said and how this trail connection
it's up to Brown County, because it's their property, and they would take it on of whether they want to use GRAFE. I don't want to say they're.
No, and I'm not saying that GRAFE's going to work with them. What I was wondering, we obviously, our part of the trail has to connect with the New Water Trail and the Brown County Trail. So is that something that we should have GRAFE look at when he's designing this and work in conjunction with those other two?
Correct.
So we make sure we're connecting?
Basically, they have a connecting point ready to go, design a connecting point, if it's going to connect, here's where it should connect.
Okay, good.
To loop behind them.
Okay, good. That was my concern, to make sure that we're looking at that too.
Yep. Real similar to what we did in Bay Harbor condominiums on the southeast corner by that water pump station that's there. We looped the trail around the water pump station, and we stubbed it out so that when Schneider National eventually, which it did turn into Alden Station, then we just pick it up where that stub was and carry it on. So I would think we do something very similar to that.
Good.
And ultimately, it'll be Brown County's project to connect to us, not us connecting to them. Is that what I heard?
One more time.
So we don't have to connect with them, they have to connect with what we're putting in.
That would be my recommendation.
So that can be a them problem and not us problem.
Because, the southern border of the village is the southern border of that park.
Yeah, okay,
So I don't know how much we want to get involved with anything that's outside of
right,
village
Parameter.
proper,
right.
per
So
se.
if we
Really,
put
that-
our
that should
stuff
be-
on there, then
my-
they can figure
In
out
my
how to
opinion,
connect
then
to it.
that's a county
Yes.
action.
Okay, I agree with that opinion, I'm just double checking, I understood.
Yep. Yeah.
Seems like a good job for them. I'd like to make a motion to approve this with the caveat that we ask Rafe to line item the construction administration and the bidding so that we can understand how those funds impact the total.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Everybody understand it? Okay.
Did I say that clearly? I don't know.
Yeah, oh, I think it's pretty clear.
Words are hard, guys.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, D, Argonne Park Trail / Cabela's Phragmites proposal.
All right, so this is the third good one that we've got tonight.
Real quick, what are
all-
Phragmites?
What's that?
What are Phragmites or Phragmites or what are?
The lovely yeah. Well,
It's grass. It's not a bug.
No.
It's not a fish. Invasive species, guys.
Invasive grasses.
Okay, thank you. I could have Googled it, but I didn't.
So Mary Kardowski met with the Packers. It's really two parts to this proposal. One of them is for the trail behind Cabela's, and what we're waiting for on that to figure out the scope of wetland delineation and all that other, because some of this stuff was approved in the past, but not the whole package. But the Packers apparently now are comfortable with us putting the trail behind Cabela's on through that woods, which you can kind of see in the map, that yellow spur on the top going from side to side from 41 over to Argonne Street. A lot of that is, well, the majority, if not all of that, is actually owned by the Packers. So we're waiting for that approval to happen before we kind of move forward on anything. Otherwise, we would have kind of tailed back the trail to have it through the woods, not very much in the woods, actually. It would be south of Valley View, because that's kind of the dividing line of what's village property versus what is owned by the Packers. But the Packers have given verbally an okay that, obviously we'd show them the plans and they'd approve what any kind of final design was as well. But we're good with the trail. They're good with us putting that trail in, and that would probably be quite a bit of boardwalk because it is a kind of wetland area. So it's taking down a lot of ash trees in there, making sure that it's not dangerous for the people to walk through. It would be putting the boardwalk in the woods area. The rest of the trail through the park would probably be crusher dust. And it would also be starting to replant some of the trees in there because that was a real thick, heavy forest before. And the thought is to replant trees to make it a forest again, or to make it a little more green than just a sea of dead ash trees on the ground. So that's part one. Part two is the Phragmites removal. So I'm sure everyone has seen this. As you go off of Highway 41 onto Lombardy Avenue, it's just a sea of Phragmites. In fact, it's so much, and I'm not trying to help Cabela's out here at all, but you can't even see Cabela's because the Phragmites is so tall. We also have the draft coming in 2024, or 25, excuse me,
no.
25.
Never heard that.
So really what I think the village as a whole is looking at is how do we better beautify that corridor as it should be, whether or not we even had the draft coming in. How do we make that just look better in general as a entry point into our community? So again, this, from what my understanding is that it could be paid for out of some TIF 3 funding, or TID 4 or 5, right? 3 out of 3. So a good portion, and it's hard to see on this map, a good portion of the Phragmites is actually DOT right-of-way. And then I'd probably say 60 to 70% is DOT right of way, and then the remaining of it is on the Cabela's property, which is actually owned by the Packers. So the Packers have also given us the okay hey, if you guys want to clear it, let's do it. We're okay with that. So we asked the DOT, hey, what do you think about the village taking care of some of this right of way? And the DOT, of course, said, sure, not an issue. However, be aware, if you're going to do it, you need to look at some of the long-term maintenance issues, which is very true because Phragmites travels. Number one, the root system is rhizome, so it travels underneath under the ground, and there's also seeds that fly. So if there's anything right next to it that isn't taken care of, those seeds are just going to, like little dandelions, butterfly things, go right on over and deal with that. So what we're looking at is not only on the Lombardi side of Cabela's, but on the western side of Cabela's, going towards Argonne Park, that would need to be treated as well. We would probably need to treat that starting this year, so we'd probably want to mow it, let it grow up, knee-high, waist-high in by the fall, and then we'd spray it. And then we'd do the same thing in '24, early in the spring. Then we would do the same thing later on in the summer. And then in the fall of '24, that's when we would try and replant some of that area. And we'd replant it. In fact, I just talked with Stantec about this morning because they did a community day out in Ashwaubomay Park and did some work for us out there. We talked about different design options that would be easily maintained. So nothing super fancy. There's a couple pictures, as you go through. I think there are. Did we add those in? We didn't add those in. Okay.
Page 42 has a picture.
Yeah, that's not the one I'm looking at, though.
That's not one you're thinking of.
They had a couple design pictures of what it could look like, and we're not looking for anything lush per se, because the more lush it is, the harder it's going to be you're going to have to do a lot of individual spot treatments because the Phragmites will start to come back for whatever wasn't gotten, during the initial go around. But I will use Ashwaubomay Park as an example. 10 years ago, you couldn't see around, 15 years ago, you couldn't see around the exterior. You wouldn't even know you were on the Fox River. And we took care of that over time. And right now, whenever there's a little patch of Phragmites that pops up, we spray it and we're done and it's good. So we're at that point now where it's very easily managed. However, it was a tough go for the first couple of years until we really got it knocked down. I would imagine this would be no different. If this were to move forward, they would be, again, taking the Phragmites out, spraying it, cutting it, treating it a couple of times, and then when they felt it was knocked down to a certain level, then we'd put in some native shrubs, we put in some native trees, and probably more riprap and easily managed materials where we could easily go in and do spraying when we needed to do that. And even a basic clearing and a basic planting would, in my opinion, would look so much better than what we've got right now. There's also a good patch of Phragmites on the north side of Lombardi Avenue. And and seeds travel. That's the city of Green Bay. However, there is quite a few Phragmites management grants that are out there and funding to do Phragmites management. Stantec said that they would be happy to contact the city of Green Bay and work with them. And hope maybe we could get the Packers to help push this a little bit, but they would be happy on a separate contract with Green Bay to try and manage that section of Phragmites on their side of Lombardi Avenue, so that it wouldn't be blowing over and affecting the whole area. So basically, we'd really try and be cleaning up that whole corner. I don't want to speak for Green Bay, but Stantec just said that they'd be willing to work with Green Bay and contact them and let them know that there's grants out there and business for Stantec, if that's going to be fully funded by them. So But we're talking about Ashwaubenon. So 2 parts to this. We're looking at your thoughts and action of how you'd like me to proceed on the thought of, because it probably would be me managing this to some extent, working on the Phragmites removal around the Cabela's area, and then putting in the trail and boardwalk, getting the plans ready for the trail and boardwalk in Argonne Park.
Rex, are there grants available for the Ashwaubenon mitigation of Phragmites?
There could be. Yeah, no different than Green Bay.
Okay.
No different than Green Bay. Again, that's not, I don't think, part of the Stantec proposal. I need to take another look at that one too. But, you know, if there were grants available, I mean, I'm sure Stantec would want, you know, a certain fee to apply for those grants. But by the same token, the net dollar amount would be less for us, you know, if we got any of those grants. It would certainly make up for any additional fees that we needed to pay Stantec to apply for some of those grants.
If I could just add to, one of the key things to the timing of this is TID 3, its final year of expenditure is this year. So in order to qualify for utilizing TID revenues to design this project and at least even possibly get it out to bid, we need to get this project identified and more or less approved. Doesn't necessarily need to be finalized or completed, but at least has to be identified and kind of worked through and planned to be completed before the actual closure of the TID. So final year of expenditures, 2023. Projects can get planned, can get approved, and then they can be completed over the next couple of years. Obviously, this particular project would likely be done before 2025 in advance of the draft, but we do need to get the project identified and approved so that it meets our expenditure requirements for TID 3.
And that's calendar year 2023?
Correct.
Okay.
Be in my area, I can say that that the sidewalk right in front of Argonne Park, anytime you ride by there, including in the park, but especially in the sidewalk that's currently there, people are always walking that. It gets a lot of use, a lot of people walking there.
I think it could be used quite a bit. It's very similar to how Sherwood Forest is used.
Yep.
Is this like a tit for tat deal, I guess, that Cabela / the Packers, was that we'll approve the boardwalk in our parcel if you kind of help clean this up, or is the removal more aesthetic driven, Ashwaubenon aesthetics type?
It's more, I think it's more Ashwaubenon aesthetics driven.
They didn't.
Cabela's really,
didn't care.
quite honestly, didn't care.
Okay.
Apparently they have bigger fish to fry, and they didn't return some phone calls.
I see what you did there, Cabela's and
You know,
Fish.
but it's the Packers' property, so then we just went directly to the Packers and said, hey, this is your property. What do you think about us working and doing some stuff here to beautify the entryway and so on and so forth? And they were good with that.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like a really good perk to that piece of land. So,
yeah.
But also having the ability to put a boardwalk through that forested area is a big perk for us. So that's why I asked the question, and because it's not our land. So
yeah, Cabela's they weren't responsive to some of the questions.
So what happens with the Packers if they get like a different leadership and they don't want us on that anymore? They don't want our boardwalk anymore?
I think what would happen with anything is once the boardwalk is officially planned, then there would be a user agreement,
Oh, okay.
you know.
Got it. Okay. Fair
Like
enough.
a right-of-way agreement type of a thing, so then it would be on paper where we'd be able
So
to
you
keep
can't
that
take it back?
boardwalk in place for the next 50 years type of,
Forever, sounds great.
yeah.
that's not buildable land where that boardwalk's going through. Then.
No,
So
but it's, well.
Essentially.
It's from the maps I've looked at, I'd probably say it's 90%, if not higher, wetland.
yeah, so
Okay.
the boardwalk's there to stay unless they want to remove
It's the same
it.
thing as in Sherwood Forest right
Yeah,
now.
okay.
It's just not buildable.
Fill that in real easy.
Okay. And then, so Stantec would just give us a design. So then at some point, we would have the, well, the, what's the word? All the research and study into the actual trail and the, those fees would come later. This is just, this is what the boardwalk would like, the surveying and that, those expenses would come at a later date, right? Because
Correct. Yep.
this is just saying,
Yep.
here's what your boardwalk.
Any further expenses out of the engineering or design would need to come back through committee and be approved,
Okay.
and costs.
And obviously, none of this, we need something in writing yet from the Packers.
What's that?
We need something in writing yet from the Packers?
If this gets approved, then yeah, I think before we proceed forward, I think we would need to do that. I would want that.
Yeah.
You know, we almost have to, because you're doing things on someone else's land, so you have to have those type of written agreements, and we'd work with our village attorney on drafting something and then present it to the Packers.
And just to be clear, as Rex had mentioned before, our village president has met with the Packers. I have met with the Packers too on this issue. So conceptually, the Packers organization is very comfortable with not only the trail, but also the Phragmites removal on the Cabela's property within DOT. We've had some back and forth exchanges via email. So there is efforts being done on the front end just to make sure everybody's comfortable with it. But as Rex had mentioned, to make it more formal and concrete, we would seek that written approval.
Right. Is there any reason Cabela's would try to sway the Packers not to allow us to do this? I don't see any, but is there anything?
I don't know. It's the Packers' land. I would think Cabela's would be.
I mean, they get more exposure to their building site-wide.
Yeah. I don't know what to say they have, because it's not their land. They're just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
They only care about their parking lot and their storage area and their building.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is thought. Okay.
Getting rid of that grass would give them more exposure for their building,
Right.
you know. Rex, as far as the application of the removal of the Phragmites, I would assume would be done by a licensed applicator to make
Okay,
sure
yeah,
that
this
there
is
is a very
not
sound
a-
method.
This is not an in-house thing. It would not be done in-house. It would be done by a company that has licensed pesticide applicator sprayers that would do it.
Okay. And then the two entities principally involved in this are the Army Corps of Engineers and the Wisconsin DNR, correct?
Stantec would be the ones to determine that based on who has rights and sayings for that piece of property, whose permissions would need to be gotten.
Okay.
That's why we would hire Stantec, is to flesh all that out.
But they would be using the guidance from those other two agencies in terms of the invasive species, I would think.
I don't know about the Army Corps of Engineers, Dean. I don't know, unless because it's a wetland, but typically they do more waterways. I don't know if this would be considered a waterway. The DNR would
Well,
be involved.
DNR, right, wetland area.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they have their ideas in terms of how Phragmites should be controlled. And then after that, any remediation that needs to be done could be done by the village. You would need a certified applicator.
Almost all of I think all three of our full-time staff are certified applicators.
Okay.
They're all certified through the state. And not only for land spraying, but I know at least one of our staff is certified with an aquatic license as well.
All right.
Okay, can I just clarify this whole thing? So part of the trail, so the northern piece that we see on our map that kind of splits when it gets out to Argonne Street is in Packer property, correct?
So if
Where that black line is, just north of that is all Packer?
yeah, if you take a look at, the map's not on there. So I don't know if you can tell which one is Valley View, but you've got the parcel lines that cut across the park.
Yep.
And you can see where the park is open and then the woods begins. that first line, once the wood starts to begin to the north, that is Valley View extended. So that's the dividing line between the park, the village property and the Packers property.
Okay.
So basically, you're taking that black line on Valley View Street and extending it
Straight up.
through the park, which it's showing.
Yep,
So that upper bubble per se, with the spur,
yeah,
even going
that's all
further.
Packer.
Yeah, so that's the Packer property.
Okay,
Pretty much the whole woods. I'd probably say,
the whole,
80 to 90% of the woods is Packer property.
and then the Phragmites are all on Packer property as well. They're on the western side of Cabela and then on the north on Lombardi and,
Yeah, you've got the majority of it on the Packer property, but there is some on, there is Phragmites almost all the way down to Morris along the fence line.
on the fence line. And that would be taken care of also in this, the whole thing in the village property and the Cabela's
Page
property.
42 has a really good map that shows the invasive species and then kind
Yep.
of where the parcel lines are.
Yep. So the village would be contracting with Santec to do the plan for removal of the Phragmites, but then it has to be bid out or,
Then it would be
Quote-
bid out.
quoted
I'm
out?
guessing, because of the size of the project, my guess is Stantec will bid on it itself, because Stantec is actually, the firm is growing, and they're growing specifically in the area of invasive species management. I think they've got like a staff of almost 25 or 30 people now, and half of them are just working on invasive species management. Stantec is actually, did something very similar. I mean, it was bid out to everybody, and Stantec bid on it themselves for that subdivision of them, and they're the ones that cleared out the woods in Sherwood Forest for us to put that path through. So I'm going to guess that they'd probably do something similar here. They'd write the bid specs up, and then, it goes out to bid for, what, a 3-week period or whatever, and my guess is that subdivision of Stantec would bid on this to do that work themselves.
so the 19.6 is really for all the design work and figuring out where the trail's going to go, and then they would bid out the Phragmite project, and then are they going to also bid out the trail
Yep.
and the boardwalk project? So do
Yep.
we have an estimated cost, and is a Packers going to help at all in any of those costs? Do you know? If it's on their property and the Phragmites are on their property, is there any cost sharing on any of that, or are we taking it all on?
I will defer to Joel on that one. I was not involved in the discussions, so. I know there's some grant management, again, with Phragmites, but again, timing is part of the crux here of how fast we can get it done.
There has been a request, although until we know kind of an estimated probable cost of the work, it's hard to say at this point, but the request was into the Packers for financial support on the project. They do have that give back program that they do give back to the area communities quite a bit of money each year, so there is a program that we can apply through the Packers to support that effort. So the request is in until we have kind of a firm number that we're looking for and support. At this point, it's unknown.
So for future, then are we taking on the responsibility of the village with keeping up with all the Phragmites and that'll be our job in the future? Is that part of this, or will that fall back into the Packers as the owner of that property? How is that all going to work out? Are we still working on that too?
Still probably working on that. I don't want to speak for Joel, but I'm going to guess that at this point, it's on us, but I'm sure we're going to be asking the Packers for partnership on the management of it.
Because that could be a pretty penny if we're responsible for taking care of that for
Yeah, and
forever.
I would say, yeah, especially in those areas along the DOT right-of-way, we get rid of these Phragmites. I don't know, until we know a plan from Stantec as to what that long-term maintenance is. Is that every 3 years we have to perform maintenance? Obviously, Rex and his crew are doing routine maintenance in Ashwaubomay to control Phragmites, albeit it's relatively manageable currently. But what does that look like? I would anticipate this is a long-term commitment for the village. If it weren't for us, this would stay status quo. The DOT has no interest in cleaning up that corner. Clearly, Cabela's and the Packers haven't without a little bit of a push from us. So I do believe that it will likely be the village's responsibility if it desires to maintain that level of service on that corner. If we don't, then, over time, it'll, probably revert back to that invasive environment, but that'll be up to us, I guess, to decide in future years.
Anything else? Entertain a motion.
Nobody wants to do it.
What's that?
Nobody wants to do it.
I think it's a worthwhile project. Again, maybe that's my bias, being in the area, using that park and watching how it's being used. It's certainly gonna make it look a lot better. And we're still growing in that area too. That park will get used more and more.
I think it's a great project too. I mean, to add that trail and going into the woodlands and the wetland area, just like Sherwood Forest, it'll be a really nice addition to the park. My only concern is it's not our property and we're taking on care and management of that property in the future. And we don't really know what the cost of that's going to be or what even the cost is to have the Phragmites removed. So we're saying, well, it's $20,000, but it could be a heck of a lot more than that. So that's my concern with it. It seems like we don't have all the answers quite yet to say, okay, let's go ahead with this, and maybe they're still working on it, but that's my concern on it. I don't want to take on something, we have enough work to do with maintaining our own properties to take on others' properties and take care of theirs. And then the whole thing with invasive species, do we have anything in our ordinances requiring businesses or even individuals to remove invasive species? Would that be covered, the Phragmites with that, or do they not fall into that? That we could say, okay, DOT, it's your property, it's in Ashwaubenon, you need to clean out the Phragmites, or Peckers, it's your property and it's in Ashwaubenon, you're required to take care of that. And I don't know if our ordinances cover that or not, and maybe they don't. But
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat with like the property side of it, like it's not ours. They're allowing us to do it, why wouldn't they?
Right. Yeah.
So I would hope that there would be, and this is what we're still fleshing out, is
Right.
if there was a partnership, I'm more on board than if there's not. If we're stuck with the entire bill to beautify someone else's property for, I don't want to say it's for the 2025 draft, but well, that, is kind of where it's pushed right now. It's coming up, and that's an eyesore when you drive in. And so, yeah, it would look great and it'll be welcoming, but at what cost? And so if there is a further partnership, which having the ability to put the boardwalk in might be the partnership, but
Yeah.
I know for personally, before I would be able to say anything, I'd like to see it some sort of number, but that's where I'm hesitating on it.
Joel, are the Packers not wanting to make any solid commitment yet until they see what this initial plan is?
That's correct, and that's essentially what this proposal from Stantec will do, is help us devise a plan and a strategy for how to tackle it with a cost. Obviously, we'll have an engineered estimate probable cost for the remediation or removal of the Phragmites. Obviously, there's other components to the Argonne Park proposal. Once we have that firm number down, then I think there can be a stronger commitment from each entity. As Tracy had mentioned, it is a little bit difficult right now because we don't know until we have that plan in place what this full detail is. So it's really kind of more of is it a priority for us as a community to clean up that corner and get it cleaned up? If it is, we can utilize some TID dollars to plan for that. At that point, we can decide, is it financially worth the effort then at that point, based on the information we know. At this point, we know there's Phragmites and we know it's a pretty extensive project. We don't know what the short-term costs are to remediate that, and then the long-term costs to maintain that kind of level, if you will.
So essentially, it's $20,000 to figure that out.
No, $7,300 to figure out the Phragmites part, and the rest goes to the boardwalk.
Correct.
So,
Figuring out the boardwalk,
that's
okay.
kind of like the split here.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're looking at, it's a $7,000 decision to see it.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I mean, I like the Phragmites thing, the boardwalk thing makes sense to wait a little bit on someone else's property, but.
So we're really looking at a two-step approval process. This initial approval to get the ball rolling to see what the numbers might possibly be. And if they aren't in our best interest and we don't get some type of agreement from the Green Bay Packers as far as their commitment because they own that property, then we're out only the initial cost that we put into it, if we decide not to go forward.
Correct. And to be fully transparent and honest and direct with you, the Stantec could have easily produced two separate proposals, one for Argonne Park and the boardwalk, the other one for the Phragmite removal. We thought it would be easier to couple them together so that it didn't get kind of convoluted, if you will, but they are really kind of two separate projects wrapped up into one proposal. Again, primarily, as I mentioned before, with TID 3's final expenditure year coming up, we had to get this in front of you quickly so that we could meet our expenditure planning period. Right. That's why it's kind of packaged together, just to help the expediting of that effort. But it could be viewed as very two separate and exclusive projects in its own right.
And then with regards to our previous experience with the mitigation of Phragmites, we've had Ashwaubomay, and what other locations that the village itself has worked on?
We've done a little bit of removal in Sherwood around the pond, and then along the creek side as you go into Sherwood Forest. Not extensive, but there are patches that we've taken care of.
Right. And I think this project is probably far bigger of an area as compared to what we have experienced up to the current time.
Certainly bigger than Sherwood, but I don't think it's necessarily that much bigger than what we did at Ashwaubomay. Ashwaubomay, there was swaths of Phragmites as deep as this room, literally going across around the whole exterior of the park, where we rented attachments with the backhoe, and we were literally mowing it down and spraying, and it took a number of years to get that knocked down. So that was, we kind of did that in-house, but we had the time to do that in-house as part of the cleanup project that we had going on out there.
Would you have the manpower to keep up with this too, Rex? With adding that much onto your plate on property that's not villages?
We're strained right now on manpower.
Yep.
We're strained.
Well, I'd like to make a proposal to approve this portion, the proposal that was submitted, obviously with the idea that we would look at what is proposed and then go from that point on to decide whether it would go any further.
So you're saying the total 19.6 that's on this proposal, Dean, is what you're saying?
Right.
So what is proposed here? The total amount, okay.
Right.
I'll second it.
It's to me, it sounds like, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but nobody's got a problem with the Argonne Trail in itself, but it's the cost of the Phragmites issue, and then also going forward. Do we want to break this up? And I mean, is it possible for us to break this up so we could get a better idea? I know it's kind of a timing issue, but so we could get a better idea of from somehow, what the cost might be with asking questions, doing a little research, and then maybe going forward. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess my thought would be, there's a couple things. So if we feel like there's a split decision as to the actual planning component, then I would recommend simply your motion would be to move to approve the portion that you're agreeable with. So if that's the Argonne portion of it, you can make a motion to approve that section, but then remove the Phragmites and wetland planning from Stantec's proposal. If the idea is that going forward, any future considerations, these two items be separated, then we can just take that as direction from a staff perspective. And then when Stantec puts their plans and proposals together for future approvals, they would be very mutually exclusive, and you can make those decisions independent of one another. If I'm answering your question correctly.
I guess, yeah. Does this project not go through without Phragmite removal?
No, they can, again, they can be very mutually exclusive to one another. Both of these projects are really village-born and initiated projects, to which point we reached out to the Packers because they ultimately do impact the Packers in both regards. Again, the Argonne Park project, that was something that Rex and his staff team have been working on for quite some time, and we were kind of tying that into a budgetary process. The Phragmites thing has been talked about independently for quite some time. I think for at least the last 2.5 years since I've been here, it's been kind of stewing in the background. And then it came to a point internally where we said, well, these two projects, if they're going to be funded through TID 3, we need to get them at least on the project plan. So let's expedite it. So that, and again, I hate to use that as an excuse as to why you should feel rushed, but that's really generally the reason why it's being proposed the way it is at the present time, is just to make sure that it gets identified on the plan if we are planning on doing them.
Our concern is ownership of property owners to take care of their portions of the property. And Joel, the question I have for you is, in the conversations that you had with the Packers, did they conceptually understand the impact of invasive species, and were they really sincerely committed to the removal of it as being a very good idea, and them having ethical and moral nature and seeing to that was done?
Well, I can answer yes to the former part. So they see the value in it being done. I guess we haven't had the conversation about the moral implications of maintaining it in the long term. We didn't get into those conversations. I think they're a little bit probably deeper than the initial conversations, but they definitely saw value in it, so much so that they said that they would be willing to support it, allow us an opportunity to plan and do that work, and so much so to say that they would be interested in supporting it financially, albeit without any concrete numbers. But the latter portion of your comment or question, we did not discuss that in that great detail.
When I think looking at the map, the bulk of it is DOT, like the DOT right away. It's not necessarily the Packers. It's like you look at the lines on the map, and that's DOT right away. So it's not even the Packers who hold as much responsibility there.
Yeah, so part of the conversation is, okay, so we got Argonne Park. We're talking about that. We want to do the trail. Looks great. On the side, we're talking about Phragmites. Boy, it would be nice if we get that corner cleaned up. We look at the parcel map and we recognize, originally we're thinking it's all Cabela's, right? And the DOT's right-of-way or jurisdiction does not extend that much further into the property. But then when you do see the site map, you recognize the DOT has a substantial portion of responsibility for Phragmites. And so originally we were talking just Cabela's, and then we realized, well, DOT has a predominant area. If we're going to address the issue in Cabela's, we have to address the DOT issue. Otherwise, we will be unsuccessful.
Point? Yeah.
Right. What's the point? So there's a challenge that way. So it is a kind of a policy decision as to whether or not it's important for us to clean up an area that is outside of our responsibility. Right. And this is kind of somewhat to a certain degree outside the purview of the park board too. We're dealing with a DOT right-of-way issue and jurisdiction of maintenance issue.
Yep.
But obviously tied to this overall project, because if we clean up Phragmites around Argonne and do the boardwalk and do some general cleanup there, the success of that ties to the area around it. So it's a pretty complicated conversation and gets into a lot of philosophical ideology issues that are tough to overcome. I guess how I would look at it is, if you're interested as a park board, as this is an opportunity to clean up that corner, make it more aesthetically pleasing for the community, a more welcoming environment, my recommendation would be to go forth with the planning design of that corner. At that point, the village can make its decision as to how important it is based on the estimated cost. If the costs are reasonable and it seems like a good effort for the village to undertake, then we'll go forward with it. If not, then that's it. At least there's a plan. Yeah. And by all means, we could hand that off to the DOT and maybe to Cabela's and the Packers and say, here's your plan. We paid for your plan.
Can we send them a bill, like they sent me the bill for the sign I knocked down last winter?
Sure. We can send anybody a bill, but whether or not they'll pay for it, that's a different conversation.
How long do you want to keep it on?
Right. Is there an option, now this is like long-term thinking, is there an option to put like a fancy, like, welcome to Ashwaubenon sign on that corner? Is that something, like, I know that's DOT right of way, but I think that's a huge traffic area. And people don't realize that when they go to Lambeau, most of their time is spent in the village. Like, we travel a lot, we talk to a lot of different people from, not from the Green Bay area, and they don't realize that, you know, the Rush, the Expo Center, all those bars, Titletown, they don't realize that that's Ashwaubenon. They think they're in Green Bay. So is there a way to make it look like, hey, welcome to Ashwaubenon, where things are pretty and we don't have Phragmites?
Anything in the DOT right away has to meet DOT standards, so like the
So a
the
big
more
ugly
decorative
blue sign?
monument signs that you see are likely not
Okay.
approvable by the state, but you'd have to get
But a big
DOT
ugly blue
approved.
one?
Like a big green reflective one would be okay. But as you go further east onto Lombardy, the
Okay.
DOT right away ends at Argonne, and so then you're dealing more with
Okay,
county jurisdiction then at that point, so there may be a possibility.
so then we can put blue instead of green.
Or maybe the Cabela property.
Yeah.
Let's talk to the Packers.
You know, and maybe looking at putting both of them together, because, you know, Packers, at least initially said it was a good concept, that if we come up with a combined proposal, that puts a little leverage in terms of us. Well, we went with your initial, thoughts on this, that it is acceptable, and that kind of pushes them to belly up and do the right thing and pay for part of it. I can't speak for the DOT. They would love to have us do it, and that takes it off their shoulders, most certainly, especially with right-of-way issues, which I, as a personal landowner with 60 acres, have that right-of-way issue all the time with Stevenson Township and Marinette. But at least if we can get the Packers on board, and that might be a leverage, putting both of them together.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to step on what's the word I'm looking for?
Motion?
Motion. You know, I just wanted another option I thought out there, so, yeah.
Options are good, Chris.
Yeah, that's what I always tell my kids. All right, any other?
Is there, as far as like the TID funding that's available, is 20,000 a drop in the bucket, or is 20,000 like, holy crap, the checkbook's empty?
No, TID 3 is a very healthy TID. Obviously, that encompasses the Titletown district, so from a
Okay.
cash flow perspective, very solvent. This certainly fits within, we always have within our project plans for TID for beautification efforts.
Okay.
This falls well below the amount that we have budgeted for beautification efforts within the TID.
Well, shoot, let's do it. It's not my checkbook. Joking, it's a joke.
Okay, I don't know if the motion still stands, but I'll reaffirm it. That will go with the proposal as it is, and,
Go from there.
right.
I will stand with my second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
We have one no. Motion carries. All right, department reports.
Talk a little bit about the bridge area at Ashwaubomay. Working on that. One of the holdups is the railings. I don't know if they've started fabrication on those. They're supposed to start about a month ago. Apparently, there's some kind of holdup. So we're waiting on that. But the trail, like I said, we're working on that. We had. I'm just going to go through this here a little bit. The lake observation deck at the chalet at Ashwaubomay Lake was built. That turned out really nice, real sturdy. It looks good. So that should last another 50 years at least. So we're good there. That was an approved budget item that for the 23 budget. So that's looking good. I've got good news that's not on here. We just got approval today, verbal or written approval. Haven't signed the contract yet. That'll be coming forward at some point in the future. for that NRDA GLRI grant, the initial work, the planning and some of the design and stuff like that through U.S. Fish and Wildlife as well as the NRDA Council. We got the funding.
Yeah.
So we're very, that's a huge dollar amount to build additional fishing shoals and do some shoreline restoration and additional invasive removal at Ashwaubomay. So was real excited to hear that today. We just got that notification today, so it's not on the sheet here.
Does that include the kayak launch too, Rex? Do you remember?
I believe the kayak launch is still in there, yeah.
Oh, that'd be great.
I think they had a couple comments on some initial design plans, but the kayak launch is still in there. Summer is going. I mean, I need to say thank you to Stantec. Stantec had their about 25 or 30 volunteers out there for Community Day today. They replanted and remulched the whole planting bed at the bottom of the retaining wall of the middle pass-through parking lot. That's in the outfield, the diamond number 2 and 3. So that was replanted and remulched today. Will look a lot better than just dirt, which is the way it's been for a while now. So we want to thank Stantec for their help with that. This is the second year in a row that they've done a project out at Ashwaubomay, which is great. We had the Green Bay Youth Triathlon out at Ashwaubomay on June 3rd. We've got a summer concert tomorrow. Paul Evenson. Paul is one of a great solo performer. He has been part of Let Me Be Frank's troupe for a while now, but he does his own solo act, a Neil Diamond tribute as part of his show, and it's a really popular show. So that'll be tomorrow from 11:30 till 2. And then also this week on Thursday night, we have our food truck rally, our monthly food truck rally at Ashwaubomay. That'll be from 4:30 until 8. We'll have at least 8 food trucks there with the band Model Citizens. And there'll also be a special event in Ashwaubomay Lake. So it's,
Is that the second one?
that's our second one.
How'd the first one go?
Good.
Good. Okay.
For a chilly night, really good.
That's probably working. That's nice.
Yeah. It was a little cool.
Was it?
Didn't rain, but it was a little cool.
As far as the food trucks, is there a variety coming in, or is it all like desserts? In the past, it's always been like desserts.
I don't know why you like how we're gonna have like 8 kind of burgers. Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
I want like 2 desserts, I want 2 appetizers, and I want like,
So there's
joking.
the barbecue truck.
Okay.
I think Maldonado's is going to be there. I think this is the first one for Osorio's Latin Fusion,
oh, wow,
which is out of Appleton.
okay.
Kona Ice.
Out of Appleton, you said?
Yep. Kona Ice will be there.
Okay,
It's kind of like ice clouds.
yeah.
Similar to ice
I was just wondering if I can feed my family or if I should pack a picnic.
So there are 8 trucks. 2 of them are considered dessert trucks.
Okay.
And 6 of them are considered food trucks.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good variety.
Good variety.
So we got that going on. We've been getting a lot of phone calls on this. We're still trying to plug away at the Smith Park Playground. We had the representative from Northland Recreation in there today. We think we've got almost everything ready to go. The only thing we still need to hang are the netting, is some of the netting. But we made the footings today. We put the footings down for them to be attached to. So really now what we're going to do next week, we're going to be digging a little drainage tunnel and pushing it into the storm. So the water doesn't sit in there when it rains. And we are waiting for a date for the rubberized surfacing, which Northland has been trying to get for us. We're hoping it's going to be in the next couple of weeks where the rubberized surfacing gets troweled down, and then we'll fill it up with wood chips and we'll be ready to go. So, but the structure itself is pretty much, we finished it up today.
Was that manufacturing delays on that one too?
That, we did not receive that structure until almost Halloween.
Okay.
And it was supposed to come in about 2 months earlier last year. So that's part of the issue, is if it had come in when it was supposed to be, we could have gotten everything done last fall. And it would be done, but because we started then in November, we thought, well, we've got the time, we're gonna start it in November and we'll finish it up in the spring. And and the spring now has turned into summer, and so it seems like this project is taking forever. So,
Weather has not been on our side.
yeah, so, I mean, we could have started it in this year in the spring, but again, that would have just put more pressure on the guys. We had the time to do it in the fall, so we started in the fall, and I'm still glad we did that, but visually, it seems like it's taking forever, not our normal, typical time that it takes to put up a playground. Usually, we have it up in a week or two. But it's basically up, but we still need to have the rubberized surfacing and then the drain tile put down. So that'll come very shortly now that all the equipment portion of it is done. Lake is going well. We've got good staffing going on. Tim Forster crew is just, they're very busy right now with a lot of stuff going on because it's summer, things are growing, a lot of flower beds, trying to make the village look good and whatnot. So Foley's Tree Service is pretty much done with all of the tree removals in the right-of-way. Trios is going to be coming in hopefully in the next couple of weeks or the next month and doing some additional park tree removals because that's another section of contract that the Trios got. And then also, I believe we've got a lot of the stump grinding done already. They've been doing that and cleaning up a lot of stuff. So we've got a lot of compliments on the forestry aspect. We're in full bore with all of our other things. We got day camp running. I mean, obviously the park programs, our 7 staff parks are all up and running. Questions from you guys on anything that the department has going on, or things that I haven't mentioned on here or that I haven't covered?
So what is a conversational ukulele?
I was going to ask the same thing.
So when I heard that we're offering a ukulele class, it's kind of like, a what? Is there a demand for that? And apparently there is because the room is full. So it's just basic, it's like basic ukulele. And they've got, you can bring your own ukuleles. They've got a couple extra ukuleles. And they all sit in a circle and they learn how to play the ukulele. And apparently it's a great instructor. And the participants absolutely love it. So it's a unique new class that we're offering that out of the box a little bit that we hit on. So
Being a huge Beatles fan, George Harrison would be very proud.
Other questions?
I have a question, but the softball, 8U and 16U softball tournament is at Pioneer this weekend. So if you can pop out and see the park in action, it's going to be some sports ball at play.
My daughter's playing.
My daughter's playing 8U. I'll be asleep in the tent because I work overnights in between the games.
My daughter's in the 16U and I'll be working concessions most of the day on Sunday.
Say Brian's got grounds crew, that lucky devil.
I believe Ashwaubomay will be hopping too.
Yeah,
What do we got there?
Ashwaubomay has like 4 different age divisions.
Yeah, I
They've
think we
got
got a big one this
too.
weekend.
It's going to be hopping in the village this weekend too.
Frequent the parks, guys, please.
And then, yeah, food truck rally Thursday, you could just, you could be everywhere.
I'm going to sleep, I'm going to eat, I'm going to have dessert. It's going to be great.
Rex, I saw that they removed a bunch of Canadian red cherries on North Road.
Bunch of what?
The Canadian red cherries that were planted on North Road under the Highlines, looks like they removed them all. They were diseased, it sounds like. Do you know, is it something that's, you don't know? Okay.
I don't know.
I was just
Sorry.
wondering about if it's something that's attacking all those types of trees or what the deal was
That's a
with
good
it.
question. I have not had that discussion with them on those particular trees.
And they've been there a long time, but.
All right, items for next agenda. Anybody got anything? If not, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll make the motion.
So I want to say this. So the July meeting, typically before we submit things for the budget process for each upcoming year, we talk about what's out there. So I'm still going to do that, whether that be at the July meeting or potentially at the August meeting. But I want to forewarn you a little bit. we've got the next section of the trail that we just approved tonight to move to Village Board. We've got the new mini park that we're looking at. We've got the Argonne Park project that we're looking at. We've got potentially a $3 million GLRI NRDA project that we're looking at.
There goes our splash pad, is what you're saying?
For management. No, I'm not saying that. Again, it's time management and staff ability to how much can one take on. And so when we can still do our top 5, but I'll be honest with you, our staff is not going to be able to take on these are big projects already that we're talking about tonight. So some of these corp plan projects may need to take a little bit of a
Backseat.
we'll discuss it, but they may need to take a little bit of a back seat until some of these bigger things get off the burner here. Because that's going to take a lot of time next year to try and wrap our arms around to do all that.
One thing I think that we really need to get going on, because it's getting dangerous actually, is the industrial park trail. At least to have an engineer come in and look at it and see what we can do. That park is that trail is in poor shape, and it's fallen into the creek basically. Not saying that it has to be rebuilt next year, but I think we need to get a plan and get going on it and decide, okay, when are we going to start taking care of this? Because it's highly used, and it's just to the point where it's not safe anymore to be out there.
I would agree with Tracy. We just biked it the other day.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
On the agenda, it's mine.
Yeah, I mean, you could put it on the agenda, and I mean, it's all part of budget, but
It'll be part of the budget. I mean, that and the other item I was thinking, we kind of put Waterford Park Playground on the back burner last year, and so I'll be honest with you, those two might
Be it.
be it.
The industrial park trail, is that the one that goes from Wabi to Sand Acres through the woods? Or are you talking about
yeah,
the
it
one
goes
that's
Wabi
along Packerland?
yeah, and then it goes to that trailhead on West Main.
West Main.
Yeah.
So basically from.
Oh,
so then it ties
between
into-
Wabi and
okay.
West Main.
It ties into West
Along the
Main and
Yep,
Sand Acres.
okay.
Yeah.
We use that one pretty frequently. Obviously, we live right there. We use that one pretty
It's good in some spots, in other spots, it's like,
Yeah.
oop,
Yeah.
a little rough.
Yeah. And there's quite a few dead trees out there, I noticed too, that are leaning back.
Better
towards
bring
the
your
trail
axe
now.
with you.
Yeah.
A lot of those are on private property too,
Oh, they are in the creek area?
yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
So-
So I noticed a couple big dead ones. I'm like, ooh, that's leaning right towards the trail.
Yep.
There's one in my yard. If you want to bring your axe over, it's fine.
But yeah, to be discussed, but that'll either be coming up at the July or the August Park Board meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Or I was going to say, I know we had 2 seconds. I didn't know if we had a motion. We got a motion in a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
This conference